Hello, how are you guys? It's Virgo season, and so it's Virgo new moon, and I really want to do this video and talk about Virgo because of course I've come to love Virgo, and there's so much to say about Virgo, and I'm gonna be running between my notes and looking at the video, so you're gonna have to forgive me if I you know, look like I'm running between the notes and talking directly to you. I spoke with Oksana this morning, which was a gorgeous conversation, and I've also spoken to Liz in the last few days. And what I wanted to say about Alchemy of Flow is that Alchemy of Flow's, I'm going to retire it, or maybe what I'm going to do with it is put it into rest and maybe respite and see where it goes, because it may come back again. But for right now, I think as a community it hasn't been working, because you know the idea of community is that you guys all interact with each other, and while you're all lovely to each other when you're all on the same calls, it hasn't kind of blossomed into more, and I take full responsibility for that, for not marketing it, for not pushing it out more. And my sincere hope is that individually you've learned a lot and you've learned from each other, which I think happened more on the calls than on anything else. But for me, the kind of the energy and the effort of it was really around bringing together, so you'd begin to have conversations with each other. And maybe it's just not at that point, or that isn't the energy, or isn't what happened, and maybe it will in the future. So where I'm going is I'm feeling this pull, as I spoke with both of you, to kind of write some books and actually publish some tangible things and do that mixture between what I do, which is, you know, kind of astrology and design, and create spaces for kind of my own kind of credibility, because I do think that, like, the moon phases, which all of you say is really useful about knowing about that, to put it out in a book so people can kind of, you know, read it and then decide what they want to do with it. And one of the big things, and there'll also be a program that I'm going to do, which I hope you join, and the program will be a mixture between kind of self-discovery and also then applying to a business or a project that you want to do it. So how do you share your story? How do you share your story? How do you create your story? How do you create a story bank? And how do you build your brand, or build your visibility, build your reputation? And that, I think, you know, as I've spoken to both of you about, like, it's super easy to have kind of a vision, which is, you know, way out here. And it's very easy to get caught in the weeds, in the present and the here and now. And the challenge is for it to move in a incremental way between here and the bigger vision. Now, all of the people that I work with are grounding things, they are growing things, and they're moving forward, like they're making tremendous progress, and they're also so much more expanded in who they are, and like, and that's a complete delight for me to see. And it is that inner outer connection. You know, when I started the Beyond Business thing, I called it Inside Out Practice, and you know, I'm really going to go back to that name because that's what it is. It's an inside out practice, and you know, your world begins on the inside, and then you begin to manifest it and realize it on the outside. And until such a time as we can feel it to be true, we can't sustain it. You know, like, we actually do have to embody it. And I was speaking to Oksana about this morning in terms of the practice, and there is no discipline, or sorry, there is no freedom without discipline. And so when we begin to learn something, like, we're kind of, you know, we're basically opening the title page, and you know, we're looking, and when we're learning it, it's kind of almost like we're looking at the contents page, right? And then we go into the preface, and you know, we get excited and we're inspired and we want it to happen. But even as we read the book, what we're doing is we're building more intellectual knowledge. And if I'm about anything, it's around that we don't want more mental masturbation, because the fact that, you know, what we do is we expand our field of knowledge. But what we really want to do is expand our field of embodied wisdom. And the difference between, you know, that expanding our field of knowledge is that sure, we can talk about it and we know it, but it's not until such a time as we actually practice it and experience it that we become it. And that is true for, you know, embodying great relationship. It's true for our work. It's true for our diet. It's true for having great sex. It's true for being able to go on a great holiday and be curious and, you know, experience what's in front of you. So everything, like, you know, comes back to the daily practice. I'm such an advocate, and I've been such an advocate of the daily practice ever since I began practicing Kundalini Yoga. Like, Kundalini Yoga was the greatest transformer in my life, and it opened up a portal to so much else. And again, like 3 minutes a day is more useful than 1 class a week. 3 minutes a day is more useful than 2 classes a week. And it is through the consistency that you actually build the embodiment. Because what we're doing is we're opening our portal of awareness. We're opening our relationship with ourselves. We're connected. We know what we feel. We're being able to unify what I speak about, that mind, heart, and gut connection. You know, and that's through the vagus nerve. Every time you do this, what you're doing is you're activating the vagus nerve and you're connecting your 3 brains. And great advocate for that strategic mind, you know, and Virgo is very much about that strategic mind, which is the new moon, and we will get there. And, you know, the heart is the soul connection. The heart is like, how do I feel? Like, how does this feel? You know, how much do I love it? And if we're not really impassioned about doing something, then, you know, we can't keep the motivation. Like, you know, we can be inspired, and inspiration is great to get started, but it's motivation that keeps us going. And then our gut is, you know, that, like, how does it feel in my body? You know, like it's the seat of kind of creativity. It's the seat of what is actually happening, and it's that body wisdom, you know. And our body wisdom is holding all our memories. Our body wisdom is, you know, your body doesn't lie, and when we're fully in our body, then we don't actually have to refer to the notes, and we don't have to, we might need, you know, a little bit of that so that we keep the sequencing going. So, but we trust that we know what we know, and again, that is really where it's at, is trusting that you know what you know. Because if we're too much in our head, we're too aware of, you know, have I hit that point? You know, we're too aware of the linear thinking. We're too aware of creating the argument. We're too aware of the footnotes. We're too aware of referencing. So we're trying to cover it all. And we're trying to cover it in this very linear way. And like, when we take ourselves out of our body, we're not as credible, you know? So the reality of it is that's where you want to be. You want to be in that heart, mind, body connection, because that's where people really believe you. That's where your frequency is coming from. It's where your energy is coming from. You know, again, I speak again and again about, you know, when you speak, if you're speaking just from your throat, it sounds kind of hollow. If you're speaking just from your mind, you're not there, you know? So what you want to do is be in that space where you've done the preparation, you've done the research. And anyone that I'm working with, like, they're experts, like, they know their shit, but they don't always believe in themselves. They don't always believe that they know their shit. And so what they do is they turn around and they're, you know, keep on trying to prove that they are as good as what they are. So I will be in touch about what's happening going forward. I'll be updating the website, and I'm going to be writing, and I'm going to write a book and a workbook, but it's going to be around, context for each sign, and then it'll be concept for each sign, and then it'll come into content. And I'm really about creation and action. Like, that's what I want you to do. And I want you to love your life and your work as you're doing it, as you're creating this vision that you imagine for yourself. And as we all know, I love Einstein, and Einstein says that imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge can only ever be, it's completely constrained and restricted to what you already know, and to the connections you can make, and to the experiences you've had. Whereas when we go into the realm of imagination, we're in touch with the cosmos, we're in touch with, we move out of linear thinking, we move into this really expansive field, into that like kind of dream field. We're moving into 3D, we're no longer in 5D, and we can actually move into dimensions beyond that and access all that was ever known and all that was ever imagined. And that is the fun place, so I can imagine living in Mallorca, because I've been to Mallorca and I know what it's like. But can I imagine what it would be like living in space? I can make up a story, but but once I go into my kind of dream field, I can really kind of bring that in. And I don't know whether you want to live in space or not, but it would be fun it would be really fun for it to try it. My darling nephew, as an aside, once said to me, he said, if they ever asked for people who would want to go and live in another planet, he said, I'd be one of those people who would put my hand up. And I said, but what about if you couldn't come back? And he said, I'd still be putting my hand up, which I just love. He's got, I think he's double Scorpio and Pisces. So yeah, I could see that he would be doing that. So anyway, Virgo new moon, the biggest energy that's around with this Virgo new moon is that square to Mars. And squares is always, like a square in astrology is where the challenge is. And it's tension, but it's tension that begs curiosity and that will bring growth. And Virgo is all about managing our lives. So, first earth sign is Taurus, where we decide what we value, right? Then we move from Taurus into Gemini, and Gemini is curious. It wants to know, it's about dissemination of information. It's around, like it's a thought factory essentially. And a lot of people with strong Gemini, end up being writers. Like, it's ruled by Mercury in the same way that Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So when you think about, that like Virgo is about distributing information, which is distributing thoughts, distributing ideas. But then when you come to Virgo, it wants to put structure around things. It wants to build things, and it wants to shape things, and it wants to shape things in a way that they're stable. Like, it's a mutable earth sign. Like, the earth signs are always about stability and security. It's a mutable sign, which means it's about adaptability, which means that it's the ending of a season, but it's preparing to go into the next season. And if you look at it in terms of, the next sign is Libra. So Virgo wants you to have things in place so that you build your partnerships, and you create harmony and stability in those partnerships, in those relationships. Because if you're scattered going into a relationship, like, you're scattered, and everybody wants some form of stability. Everybody, of course, has a different tolerance in terms of that. But we all want security and stability. We all want to have confidence and have surety. And the only way we can do that is building foundations. And the only way we can do that is making sure our bills are paid, making sure that we're doing the groundwork. And that's what Virgo wants. It doesn't want efficiency for efficiency's sake, which like so many people want. But what it wants is efficiency for effectiveness. And effectiveness is, as I always say, systems liberate. So that like it really wants you to go, okay, what is the structure? And what are the systems that I can put in place here that liberate me, that free me up? You know, it's like, where can I do direct debits rather than having to worry about, is a bill paid? Where can I put things in my calendar with alerts rather than having to hold that information in my head? Where can I, and it's about daily habits, and daily habits like which are about your health and your well-being, and you know, and of course that's to do with your mental health, it's to do with your physical health, it's to do with your emotional health. Like, what do you need to have in place? What's your self-care? All of those are the realm of Virgo. And like, and then if you bring it into kind of the sixth house, which, you know, Virgo is it's got those Virgoan things in the sixth house, and the sixth house is about in service to others. But if we don't serve ourselves, we're not capable of serving others. We're giving from an empty cup. We're giving from a place that we're depleted. So it always comes back to making sure that you're taking care of yourself before you take care of others. Now, the square to Mars, which means like that, and of course Mercury. So Mars is like the god of war. Like, it likes action, it's pure desire, and it's fighting for what's good. It's not, you know, it's not war for war's sake, which, you know, can often be seen as that. But it's around, but it's fiery. It's like it's initiating energy. Mars used to rule, in traditional astrology, Mars used to rule Scorpio, which is kind of, again, a more sophisticated Mars than the Mars in Aries. The Mars in Aries is like, it's childlike, it's innocent, it wants to start things, it's a cardinal energy, it's, you know, really fiery. So when you put together a fiery Mars and you put together air Mercury, and air can, you know, fire needs air. Just be aware of watching your words, be aware of your communication, be aware of if you're inflating and amplifying things, be aware of, you know, whether you're kind of ready to run into the fight, and so hold back on that. But remember, you're in Virgo season, and the Virgo new moon again wants structure. So it wants, if you were going to do contracts, and we're about to have Mercury go retrograde, it wants really clear, concise communication. It wants clarity. It wants to know. And again, you know, as I say, you've got Mars in that square. So it's around, okay, so how can we initiate those conversations that we know that we need to have? And how can we bring stability and structure to them, right? So just to kind of go, Estrella is one of the stars, you know, so it's seen, Virgo's seen as the high priestess, and it's the goddesses, right? So it's a really feminine sign. In fact, I think it's the only feminine sign. It is the only feminine sign. So, but it's not virgin in that sort of, you know, has never had sex way. It's the Vestal virgins, and the Vestal virgins had their own resources. So they didn't need to take a partner. They could choose to partner or not. So it's purity of intention and purity of action, but it's not purity in that way that, you know, it's not virginal. I mean, this whole concept in the Western world of kind of virginal is that it's been untouched. It's not, it's, you know, what we want is pure desire. We want pure intention. We want pure focus. And it's very much around that. And so Estrella is said to have been the last of the immortals, and that she left Earth because she thought, what the fuck are they doing with it? So there's many goddesses associated with, and one of the things that's really important is that Virgo's arc, its constellation in the sky, is only visible from spring until harvest time, which is fall, which is which is of course now in the northern hemisphere. Persephone is another one of the goddesses, and the mythology around Persephone is that she was abducted by Hades and brought into the underworld, and then her mother was so pissed off I can't remember, what was her mother? Was her mother Diana? I'll come back and talk about that. But her mother ruined the harvest, and then she negotiated for her return for half of the year, so you can only see the constellation, for to help her with the harvest. And so the seasons began, and that's really interesting for it to think in terms of, like, so before this time it was eternal spring. Like, we're talking about, this is 15,000 years ago. Imagine eternal spring. Imagine that beauty of, like, fresh beauty every day, snowdrops and daffodils and tulips and all of that. So many think of Virgo as being the sign of the Virgin, but remember, purity is not just sexual. There's pure beauty, there's pure desire, there's pure thinking, pure prosperity and pure poverty. And so which one will you choose and where you focus? So I always think of Virgo ruling the container. So it's controlling the flow. Like, it's, you know, it's order versus chaos, and it's dream versus its realization. So always think in terms of the polarity. So the polarity of Virgo is Pisces. Now Pisces is about the dream. And if you've got a prominent Pisces in your chart, what you want to do is you want to focus on the dream and bring it to its realization. And its realization happens in Virgo. And that's what Virgo is really around. Okay, so how do we realize the dream? But if we get too Virgoan, which goes in the shadow, which is like that control stuff, and if we get into Virgo, which is like superstructure, and it's all work, but it's no play, so you kind of lose the curiosity and you lose the flow. And we all know, like, that's the reputation of Virgo, is kind of being super fucking uptight, super anal, you know, it gets kind of caught in the weeds, it's the devil's in the detail, but, you know, it really is devilish in the detail, you know, but really it's like, where can you have enough detail that you're creating the structure? And remember, it's a mutable sign, so it wants to be flexible and it wants to be adaptable. So it's constantly taking notice. But the shadow side, as I say, goes into control, and it gets so caught in the perfectionism that it can't realize it. So then you go back into Pisces, ruled by Mercury, mutable, the yin energy, symbol is a maiden, and we've covered that. So it's really around liberating your choices. And as you know, that's what all of my work is about. You know, it's around how can you build discipline, and with that discipline and with that structure, how do you create freedom? Like, how do you go from, you know, dreaming something to then, you know, incrementally building it, loving the process of building it, like having fun in the process of building it, having the vision for what you want to create, but not being attached that, like, it has to be this rigid thing, because, like, you know, that's really where we get caught in Virgo, is like we're holding Adam, this mentor that I work with, he talks about it like it's shit thinking, you know, which is that you're holding so much of your past in your body, like that it literally is shit thinking. You're carrying all this shit around with you. And so what we always want is to, you know, take things in, take what's useful, which brings me to that it rules the small intestine, and then get rid of what we don't need, you know, always. And that's daily. And I mean, in coming back to Kundalini yoga, like, for women, you're supposed to be able to process everything that you ingest within 18 hours. And for men, it's 24. You know, so, like, you know, light foods, really important. You know, it's a harvest. So it wants you to feel autonomous, powerful, and it wants you to feel clear. And of course they get a bad rap. I've certainly given them a bad rap because they're anal, hyper organized and uptight and all of that, and they're stressing over whether but they know that stressing over whether the bill is paid it's chewing through energy that can be directed towards creativity and towards fun. So it can be spent in pleasure, and it wants you really to get to that place of where it's, you know, effortless effort. So set up the direct debit, get the spreadsheet done, and knowing is power. Like knowing, what your resources are, knowing that if you do your daily practice in the morning, that your energy is great for the rest of the day. And knowing that when you get back on track, that you've got tools and techniques to come back. And like, what I love about astrology is like it brings us into chronology, and it brings you into, okay, well, this is the time of year, this is the season for me to be doing this particular thing, and this is for me to be paying attention with this. And this is why the moon cycles are useful and important. It's like the first 3 days of the new moon, you can't see the moon, so it's like really kind of going, okay, so in Virgo season, I know Virgo's around structure, I know Virgo's around getting organized, I know Virgo's around clearing stuff out, right? And so it's saying, what's the minimum? And and not minimum as in nothing, but minimum as in what's the optimum amount that I need to do to accomplish this. Not less than you need, because you need resources and you need support, but what's the optimum amount? And get rid of everything else. Like, it's, if I was to talk about one word that would cover Virgo, it would be discernment. And discernment is a superpower, knowing that, okay, 1 coffee a day is great for me, 2 isn't. Knowing that, okay, I can have toast for breakfast or a croissant, or I can have 1 piece of carbohydrate, but then for the rest of the day, what I need is green veggies. I need to be able to process things quickly and are efficiently, so really knowing that like listening to what your body craves. Like if it wants rest, give it rest, because if you keep on going through, well, you're not doing effective work. So it says knowing is power, guessing is any fool's game. It knows the wrinkles on your face are a result of not enough self-care, and too much unboundaried kind of, people pleasing. So many people, like, I see so many people in what I call the serving professions, like social work and all of those. And people go into those professions very often trying to sort themselves out or figuring themselves out. But what they do is they focus all this energy on other people, and they get completely depleted and have no energy for themselves. And then they become resentful, and it builds and it builds and it builds. And like, so think of Virgo as that sorting out energy. Its clear message is you come first, and then you can selflessly and generously be in service of others. Daily routines, health and well-being, we've covered that. And you've heard me talk about daily practice, which means that you're not projecting. It means that you don't land on somebody else's problems and somebody else's drama, and you don't end up in somebody else's stratosphere. Like, you're managing your own. Can you feel, oh yeah, the biggest energy is Mars. So, and it wants you to show up. It wants you to be reliable. It wants you to do your thing. So in tarot, the card that's associated with it is the Hermit. And remember, the Hermit, in certainly in the Rider-Waite, is carrying a lantern. So it's shining light on what it is that you need to do. So it's showing you the way. All right, showing you the way. Like, okay, this is necessary, this is not necessary, this is the way. Discard, what the light doesn't shine on. It's not your business. And what other people think of you is also not your business. So the new moon of Mars, Mars is so well versed in tension. And I mean tension as in sort of like that elastic, you're pulling it and it creates tension. And that's what a square is, really, is, what's the tension between action, which is Mars, and structure, which is Virgo. So it's saying, like, Mars is can be impulsive action. Virgo wants structure and framework, it wants foundations and frameworks, it wants stability. You know, so you've got fire, and earth contains fire. And so there's the tension between not too much structure, enough structure to contain the fire, enough structure so that you can get the thing done, enough structure so that you don't kind of, you know, spend all your time just creating and creating and creating and never realizing. Like, it's the builder. I always think that the Capricorn is the developer. You know, it wants to amplify the structures that you've built. It kind of goes, okay, now all of this is working. How do we make it greater? Like, how can we invest for the future? How can we make this even bigger? So new moons, no, not seed planting this time. It's just stripping away the excess. Have I said that enough? Have I said that enough? And it's around directing and clearing your focus, but not through your ego. You know, this is so important, like really kind of tune in and, you know, do that thing where you're asking your soul for guidance. Again, come back to Einstein in terms of that imagination. And that imagination can often show you structure. Like, I've had some amazing insights in the last few weeks, and one of them is that, you know, I haven't produced tangible things, so people are, you know, a little mystified what it is that I'm doing. And thank you for being here and for being my beautiful clients, because, you know, it's always a conversation, you know, and it's always a learning, and you're trusting in me as I'm trusting in you. Like, we're always in conversation, and I appreciate you, and if you're a client of mine, you know that I love you. You know, I only work with people like that I have that absolute beautiful resonance with, and that we can have fun together, like that we're not going to take it all so seriously that we get caught in our own shit. So our ability to create and manipulate energy through this body that we've been like that we've shown up in, you know. And like, one of the things that's sort of important here is when you think about it in terms of, like, check out where your south node is and where your north node is. And your south node is like what you've come in with, you know, it's the gifts you've come in with, the challenges you've come in with. And like, if you see it as a sort of a continuous adventure, essentially, or an adventure with pauses, from one incarnation to the next. So there's something that you've come in with that you do in a way that nobody else does. And like, you've got gifts and you've got challenges. And the challenges are the lessons you're going to learn, and the gifts are the ones that help you with those lessons. But we can get caught in our south node. You know, like, it's really easy. Like, my south node's in Aquarius. I grew up in a large family. It's very easy to always kind of think, oh, what are other people's needs? You know, in that, like, my house, you could make a cup of tea without making a cup of tea for everyone, and there was 8 of us. You know, so it's all of that thing of like being in service before you make your own needs. So whereas what you want to do is use the gifts, learn the lessons from your south node, because it's where you're really comfortable from. You've probably spent many lifetimes there, and you want to go to that space of your north node. Now, your north node is not going to be comfortable, and there's always a gap, and there's always a practice of faith as you move from the south node into the north node. But the north node is what you've come in to learn. It's what you've come in to experience. It's the adventure you've come to have in this incarnation. So like, my north node is in Leo, which means it's all about kind of me and self-expression, and kind of bring that childlike play into what I'm doing, you know. And I hope that that's what I'm doing. Like, but I have a real fight between kind of, you know, this rational, linear kind of, okay, I need to prove it. And I'm, you know, I've moved, I feel I'm moving beyond that. And the more I do it, I'm moving beyond that. You know, a few years ago, I would have hated showing up on video. I would have been terribly aware of this and this and this. But but now I just realize, okay, it's about sharing what I know and with people who want to hear it, and that I can help people because of the vast amount of experience that I've had at this point in time, out of all the places I've lived, all the crazy things I've done, the amount of times I've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and how I've applied what I've learned along the way. And so it's around really integrating the knowledge and the gifts I've had and the lessons that I've learned into whatever it is, my perspective it is, and offering this to you. So we come to the end of this video, and we come to the end of our Virgo new moon. It's been a long one, I'm so sorry. And so what I'm saying to you is, really the question is how can you use this fire of Mars to create this structure, to get in action, to create and manage your life better? And in terms of if it's for business, it's okay, well, what are the things that I can create that will continue to serve me? One of the insights I've had is it's not about keeping on creating, it's around building core things, and core things that you're interested in, that you're excited in, and that you can keep on selling those things, but they'll be different every time. So because there's a vast amount of what would you say, particularly in what I'm doing, of knowledge, of practice, and expansion and amplification within the things that I've created. It's like, it's minimum a year to learn how to work with the moon. I've been doing it for 10 or 15 years now, so I just know when the moon cycles are. Like, I know it in my body, I can look up and confirm it. And I'm usually in what I should be doing within that moon cycle. Sometimes, particularly with this Mars energy, like, I really want to get into the doing right now, and I'm kind of going like, let it land a little bit more. With the astrology and with knowing that, it's around, I now realize, oh wow, I need to give people workbooks so that they can, begin to explore on their own, and then they'll come to me when they want to deepen their knowledge. And it's around, in terms of the design thinking and the branding, it's about publishing a book, plus it's around putting together a program. And the first time I'm going to do it, it will be a 12-week program, but I think it might even expand into a year-long program, because the 12 weeks will teach people how to do it, but then the practice of implementing that knowledge, and because I know we talk about this all the time, actual implementation, getting into action, it's not going to happen in a phone call, and it's not going to happen in a moon cycle. And you know this, we all know this, we're all old enough and bold enough for it to know this. It actually takes consistent practice. But what we do is we go into this doubt, and I can speak about it because I've gone into it myself so many times, where I don't give the program, I don't give the product, or I don't give the teaching time to land, because you learn something and then you have to process it, so you begin to understand it, but it takes time for that to land in your mind, it takes time for it to land in your body, and it takes time for your actions to reflect that learning. And it's only through the experimentation of the knowledge that you can then make it your own. You're not going to do your moon practice in the same way I do my moon practice. You're not going to do your Kundalini practice in the same way I do my Kundalini practice. You're not going to do your branding in the same way. And what I'm interested in is giving you information and knowledge, and being able to guide you as you begin to implement it. So you can come back and go, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm feeling. These are the questions I have. And so then as you implement, you can refine. As you implement, you make it your own. You know, and the moon cycle is a great example. You know, for the first time you read it, and you might do it, as I say, the first time you try and do it perfectly according to the teachings. Second time, not quite so perfect. And then you go off and you possibly lose it. But it's like you come back to it again if you've realized that it's a practice that is good for you. And of course, the moon, you know, as we spoke about this morning, makes total sense. Like, number one, it's visible. Number two, like, we're 70% water. You know, and, you know, the Hermetic principles of as above, so below, we know the energies are changing. And what we're going to do through our practices is learn a little bit more about who we are, learn a bit more about, you know, the planets that are really ruling our chart, and we find out, oh wow, so if I am challenged by Saturn, how do I then pull Saturn out of my chart and work with Saturn and learn about, you know, the discipline of Saturn, learn about the humor of Saturn. You know, most people see Saturn is just a malefic, you know, they're afraid of Saturn, but Saturn is this gorgeous teacher, you know, it's a kind teacher, it's a benevolent teacher. And, you know, it's like the best teachers we all have are firm and fair, you know, and I hope that I can be a firm and fair guide, because, you know, we're all learning together, and I'm always learning. So on that note, just allow it to land. We'll have the crescent tomorrow, so you can begin to then kind of, you know, frame your attention and begin to see, you know, what's the next steps. So much love, and until soon. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being here.